Let's talk about the first contract Mariah Carey ever signed. Hey kids, Treacle here. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I've got all things Mariah related happening on my channel. I've got interviews with other lambs, quizzes, book club, reaction videos. We've got it all going on. Today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the Questlove Supreme podcast and that wonderful 3+ hour long interview that Mariah gave. So if you haven't checked out that interview, do go and give it a listen. I will link to it in the description below. There are a couple of videos on my channel where I pulled out some of the comments Mariah made. Firstly, we spoke about the Caution album. Mariah said that she wished she had some more time to work on it. She had some thoughts and feelings there. And then secondly, Mariah was asked to comment on Walter, her old writing partner, and there were some choice comments there. It was very, very interesting. A couple of videos, do go and check them out. Today, I want to talk about the very first contract Mariah signed, and she spoke about this in the interview. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about that contract she signed with Ben Margulies. So Ben Margulies is associated heavily with Mariah's debut album. Mariah has told this story many times, but just a quick recap. Mariah met this guy named Ben. His father had a wood shop, and in there was a studio. Mariah was young at the time. She was a high school student, and she would spend all of her free time in this studio in the wood shop working on her debut. And she said about, sleeping on the floor at night and working in this tiny studio in the wood shop, and she was writing songs for her demo with Ben. Now, Ben and Mariah wrote 7 songs together that ended up on her debut album. 7 of the 11 tracks on that debut were credited as being co-written by Mariah and by Ben. Now, when we got the rarities last year, we got an 8th one with Here We Go Around Again. After Mariah's career officially started in 1990 and she started releasing material, Mariah never worked with Ben again. However, he continued to profit from her work, making money on all of the albums she released throughout the 1990s, thanks to a deal that Mariah signed with him. A deal that Mariah describes as possibly the worst deal in history. Let's listen to a clip from the Questlove Supreme podcast interview where Mariah talks about working with Ben and that first contract, and then we'll talk.
I met this guy named Ben Margulies. We worked in his dad's studio, which for the time, I was lucky to be at any studio. It was a small studio in the back of a wood shop. I guess they must have had some money because I surely didn't. They were like 25, 26, and I was a kid in high school. So I was just happy to be there working and writing. So I started working with Ben, and we made this demo with a lot of songs that we wrote. And this year when we released the rarities, there's a few of the song, well, really one song that we wrote together called Here We Go Around Again, which back then I loved the demo, but when we went on to make the album, they just tried to reinvent the wheel because the demo was better. Anyway, so I had these songs and people felt that they could be hits. The label felt they could be hits. So when I was signing my deal, even though I signed like the worst deal in history, because it was through that production company, I don't know if it's the worst deal in history, it's pretty bad. But the one thing, thank God, I didn't do was sell my publishing for $5,000 because
awesome.
that was presented to me as an option. So $5,000 sounded like $500 million to me at that point. And luckily I didn't, because I had seen a documentary on the Beatles and their whole thing and what they gave away. So I knew better than to do that. But when I did sign my deal, the one thing I said to the lawyer, because I knew I was kind of giving away a lot, but you don't know, as a broke kid that grew up with nothing, you don't know. I just said to the lawyer, I said, the one thing I want to make sure is that nobody can force me to do somebody else's songs. Like, I just have to make sure that they can't force me to do that.
So Mariah was very young when she signed that contract, and she wasn't really aware quite how much she was giving away. She touches on this in her memoir, The Meaning of Mariah Carey. So let's turn to the good book, the Lambley Bible, and let's remind ourselves of what Mariah says about that deal with Ben. Now, I touched upon this in part 2 of my book club. Here's a clip. One bit I went mad with my highlighter on was that first record deal with Ben. I didn't realize it was like that, Let me just refresh your memories very quickly. She said, I didn't realize the enormity of what I had signed away. I was informed, and what I remember was that he got 50% of the publishing on all songs we worked on together for my first album. Okay, fine. But additionally, he received 50% of my artist's royalties for the first album, 40% for the second, 30% for the third, and so on. It went on that way from 1990 until about 99, even though Ben didn't write one word or note with me after the first album.
Sorry, I think he's actually said in public that he would like to work with her again, but obviously thinking like, no.
He's had his money. He's had his money. I think like she speaks about, especially in those early years, like she was rapidly maturing and progressing beyond the people she was working with. And she does kind of talk, especially pre-record label, she does talk about different people she was working with. I think I just put Ben in that kind of camp. But after learning like the details of the deal, I'm like, yeah, I don't care how many times Ben shouts that he wants to work with her. He's had his coins.
Now that we're speaking about it, I feel like I don't even know how that part didn't hit me the way it's hitting me right now. Like, I don't think I really added the numbers together while I was reading.
But then, you know, show of her character, she said, out of loyalty to him and the hard work we put in together in that little studio, I never looked back and tried to reset or recoup. So she knew she signed it. She didn't have a lawyer or a parent or anyone with her. She is age 18, whatever, signing so much away without realizing it. But she has just not contested it. She's let it ride out.
It probably would cost her a lot more to probably fight it. And at the end of the day, she said it in the book, a contract is a contract. So
yeah,
ultimately, you know, she signed. But I mean, think about the money he would have got for even Music Box. I mean, 30 million albums, even Daydream. Like, that was the fifth album, so he's still getting half of whatever she made out of an album that sold, again, over 10 million, or maybe how was it, 20 million copies or something?
He's making, you're exactly right, I don't know the numbers, but he's making so much money from those albums. You think she's like an album a year. Every time she puts out an album, he's going to be minted all over again. I found this shocking. You work with a guy in the late 80s, you write songs together, you make a demo. Those songs go forward, they become part of an album, it's a huge success, everyone wins. But then they don't work together again. But this guy, Ben, continues to make money off Mariah for subsequent albums across subsequent years. He doesn't have to lift a finger. Every time Mariah releases an album throughout the 90s, he is making money. Mariah has said in other interviews that the contract that Ben presented to her, the contract that she signed, was photocopied or copied from a textbook about the music industry and the business side of things. So my question to you is, was Ben clever? Was he crafty? Or was he lucky? On one hand, maybe he spotted this huge talent in Mariah, knew he was onto a good thing, and found a contract that he knew would serve his interests and his purpose very, very well. And he felt confident that he could maybe get a young, naive teenager to sign such a contract. On the other hand, he was only young himself. I think he was 25 or thereabouts, and he is searching for a contract. He can't put one together. He hasn't got a contact to do it for him, so he just reaches into a textbook and finds something. And maybe it's just a happy coincidence that it was so generous in his favor. What do you think? I'm not savvy in the world of music industry business contracts, so I would love to hear from any of you guys who have got some experience, some insight. If you have a qualified opinion, hit me up in the comments and let me know. Is this contract that Mariah signed with Ben Margulies back in the day pretty standard? Have you come across it before? Or is something a little bit off? Does it strike you as slightly strange? And the rest of you guys watching, let me know in the comments, what do you make of this whole Ben Margulies situation? The guy wrote with Mariah prior to her debut, but then continued to make money from her all through the 90s. What do you think? Let me know in the comments and I will catch up with you in the comment section. Be sure to check out my other videos highlighting comments that Mariah made in the Questlove Supreme podcast. The links are in the description below, as is the link to the podcast interview itself. If you haven't checked it out already, immediately go and listen to it. 3+ hours of in-depth interview with Mariah. It's really, really interesting. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss my future content. I'll be back soon with another video. Cheers, thanks a lot.